Other people often accuse parents of enabling, and parents themselves are often confused about where the line between helping and enabling actually is. After all, we all want to help our children, but at what point does that help cross over into enabling? That's going to be the topic of the discussion for today. Some people seem to think that any expression of love or sympathy or compassion towards your child is simply helping them to stay within the addiction, that it's enabling. I've also noticed that most of the time these very same people have no problem justifying the expression of their own love and compassion towards their own children. It's just when you try to express sympathy and empathy and compassion towards your child that it becomes a problem. This is obviously nonsense. Your child needs to know that you love them, that they are loved. So obviously that definition of enabling can't be right. So what is it? The Center for Motivation and Change provides one way of looking at what enabling is. They say that enabling is any action that supports or reinforces drug use or bad behavior. And they even provide some pretty good examples. One of them is calling school and saying that your child is sick when they're really just hungover. Another is giving them money instead of expecting them to earn money. And another example that they use is when we do their chores for them, such as pick up their clothes, clean their room, instead of expecting them to do their own chores. I think that's a pretty good example and definition of exactly what enabling is, but I think it's a little bit narrow. The definition I find most helpful is simply this. Enabling is anything that you do for someone else that they can and should be doing for themselves. Most often, your efforts are motivated by a desire to protect them from the natural consequences of their own bad actions and decisions, their own bad choices. What I like about this definition, well, there's many things I like about this definition, but perhaps the two things that I like most about this definition is, one, it expands the scope. There's so many things that we do beyond enabling drug addiction. We enable so many other behaviors, some good and some bad. The other thing I really like about it, though, is it allows us to get away from shaming terms. Let's face it, calling someone an enabler is a shaming term. This way, by the definition I just showed, the definition that enabling is anything we do for someone else that they both can and should be doing for themselves, normally in an effort to protect them from the consequences of their own bad choices. With that definition, instead of giving examples of this is what an enabler looks like, this is what an enabler looks like, this is what an enabler looks like, it allows us to question ourselves. It allows us to question our behaviors and determine for ourselves, is what I'm doing helpful or is it harmful? If it's harmful, what can I do to change it? We can look at our behavior to determine if our behavior is helping or enabling through two different ways. We can either look at the signs or we can ask ourselves a series of short questions. Let's do both, but let's start with the questions first. The first question is this: is what I'm doing solving the problem for today, or is it teaching them to handle their own business in the future? You've heard the adage, give the man a fish, right? Giving the man a fish is clearly enabling. You're going to need to give him a fish tomorrow, too. Teaching the man to fish is helping. The next question is what I'm getting ready to do something the individual should reasonably be expected to do for themselves? Some things like changing the engine in a car requires more than one person. Two people at minimum have to be involved. Helping that individual change the engine in his car is not something they would normally be expected to do for themselves, so that would be helping. Related to that is what I'm getting ready to do something the individual would normally be expected in society to do based on their age and development? Or am I making exceptions for them? If you're making excuses and exceptions as to why your child cannot do this when anyone else his age can, that's enabling. Along those same lines, is this something that he or she has the knowledge, skills, and ability to do? If they do not have the knowledge, skills, and ability to do it, teaching them the knowledge, skills, and ability is helping. Doing it for them is enabling. And the last question is simply this: is this the first time that I or someone else have had to help this individual in the exact same way? Let's take, for example, the homeless guy on the street corner, and let's name him Bob. Let's say that you are the first person in Bob's life as a homeless guy, not today, but in his existence as a homeless guy, to give Bob $5, to give him money. That could possibly be construed as helping. Probably not. You have to look at the situation. But clearly, if you're the second, third, fourth, etc. person in his lifetime to give him money, then no, that's not helping. That's enabling. Now let's take a look at some of the signs that might indicate if we're enabling or not. The first is, am I avoiding, ignoring, or tolerating their problematic behavior? Along those same lines, am I denying their problematic behavior even exists? Another sign would be, have I taken on financial responsibility for them? It's one thing to provide your 8-year-old an allowance. It's another thing to provide your 18-year-old an allowance when they should have their own job. And it's entirely a different thing to be still financially supporting your 28-year-old. Am I making excuses for them? That's a huge thing. Am I saying, well, they just can't do this because whatever? No. Sorry, that's enabling. Am I taking on their responsibilities? It's one thing to clean your 8-year-old's room. It's another thing to still be cleaning your 18-year-old's room. Am I sacrificing my needs to meet their desires? That's a problem. Have I lost my boundaries? Is the definition of where they stop and I begin and I stop and they begin beginning to fuzz and fade away? We're going to talk about boundaries later on. The last one I want to talk about, though, on the signs is, am I not following through on the very consequences that I promised I would follow through on if they continue to do such behavior? If I'm not following through, I have surely crossed into enabling. But did you notice the two things that are not on either the list of questions or the signs to watch out for. The first one is, am I showing my love to my child? Am I reassuring him or her that I still love him or her despite what's going on? There's a lot of ways you can show your love without getting into the helping versus enabling dichotomy. It might seem counterintuitive, but keep your love out of your decision of whether or not you're helping or you're enabling. It's hard, I know, but you have to do that. The other thing that's not on there, the other question that's not on either the questions or the signs list is what I'm doing supporting and encouraging the positive behavior that I want to see? There's nothing wrong with bribing your children. If you are rewarding and supporting things that directly conflict with addiction and drug behavior, that's a good thing. Things like doing their homework, studying for an exam, being respectful, being on time, doing their chores, those are things that we can and should recognize and reward. Those are things that directly conflict with addictive behavior and that we want to see more of. There's an old saying, you get what you reward. Come on, Apollo, let's go.